microphone. I don't know who I'm trying to please here. Which one of you?
That's a really good question.
Okay. I'm going to please Gelman.
He's the producer. You should. We got all those cameras rolling? Welcome to Emotionships, where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. I'm your host, Charlie Carroll, along with my cagey co-host, Mallory Redmond.
I need more. And so does Gelman. I can see him.
Cagey means clever.
Okay, so I was thinking about this morning. Do you Google adjectives that start with a C?
No.
Yes, you do. 100%.
I am a reservoir of words.
Well, you definitely proved your point with that word.
Thank you. The well is deep.
It's good. It's always exciting.
Yes. My KG co-host, ladies and gentlemen, Mallory Redmond. Welcome to the program, episode 37.
Okay. What's your emotionship with that number?
I don't know that I have one. I do have a love affair with words and numbers. Mm-hmm. And often I often will put the temperature in the car. Might be embarrassing to say, I don't know. Based on a number that feels good to me, not necessarily. Like, I won't do 71.
Why?
Because I have an association with 70 and 72, but not 71.
Wait, so you won't do 71?
I mean, most of the time, no. The number doesn't feel right to me.
That's really funny and weird.
I said that.
Interesting.
Yes. Are you staying up with the news of the day here in this crazy political season? 21 days. Uh-oh, there's that number. 21 days out from the...
Monaco.
I need to see a picture of this guy.
Yeah, I'll show you. I have plenty. Much to my husband loves it. There's like boxes of photos of him in our garage.
Hold on a second. Why aren't we getting rid of those boxes?
I've gotten rid of some. Some of them, they're just memories. That was a time of my life.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Am I keeping up with the new? I guess kind of.
Yes. Amy Barrett going through the...
Yes, I have seen that.
You know, I was reading a little bit of news yesterday, and the Democrats are complaining about this, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her seat. She said several years ago that a president is elected for 4 years, not 3. And it's funny to me when politicians make comments living in the day and age where everything is on the record, and then they get put in a situation where their words are held against them. Like, it's completely normal that a president has the opportunity when a seat for the Supreme Court opens, that doesn't happen that often in an election year, to go ahead and push it through even when there's only a couple months left potentially of their presidency. It's happened 29 times, and all 29 times a president has gone ahead and put a candidate up through the process. And so I was finding it very funny to listen to.
Let's just talk about the truth of the matter.
Let's talk about it.
Whichever party does not hold the presidency is going to be complaining about that.
That is
not a Democrat thing. It's just an everybody thing.
It's a power grab.
Yeah.
It's a power thing.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with her though. Amy Barrett's words. I'm impressed with her, and I've looked a little bit into her background. She's done very well for herself.
Good for her.
Yeah.
I have not done as much research as you, particularly because why do you know all that stuff 29 times? You prepare. You did your homework.
Well, it's just interesting because I was watching a piece of the vice presidential debate, and Kamala Harris mentioned something about Abraham Lincoln and how he handled something like that, and it didn't sound right to me. So I went back and looked it up, and it was just a little bit out of context. Some of it was right, but then I saw that 29 different times this has happened, and all 29 presidents have gone ahead, and so that was it. I saw on your Instagram.
Oh no.
No, this is good.
Okay.
I saw your comment about the Seahawks game.
Yes.
The other night. Do you want to tell that story? I thought it was really, there's a lot of truth and power in it, I think.
Oh, I know. To what Darren said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were watching the Seahawks. They played Sunday Night Football, which here on the East Coast starts in the middle of the night, basically, 8 something. And so the games go really late. And so we were watching, and it got to the fourth quarter. There was like 4 minutes left, and I kept checking. I wanted to go to bed.
Yeah.
I kept checking so the context or the backstory here is that I get very invested and nervous about, this is something that comes down, if you want to talk generations, this is something I get from my father.
Okay. Hi, Eric.
Should
we call him?
No. All of the, like when the Bulls were in the, I'm just rolling right through that. When the Bulls were in the championships in the 90s, my dad never watched a minute.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he would like walk around the block.
That is
crazy. He would go to a
I've
park.
heard of these things.
He would go to a park and he would like gauge how they were doing because he could hear the cheers from the houses near the park.
Oh my gosh.
So this is how I am. I'll watch, but like I get super nervous.
Hold on. This is another reason you have to watch Moneyball with me. We keep talking about this.
I know.
But Billy Beane, who was the GM for the athletics for the Oakland A's, literally would have to leave the stadium because of getting nerves.
Yeah.
You've got to watch the movie.
Yeah, so that's how I am. And so 4 minutes left in the Seahawks game. They're down a touchdown. And I'm looking on my app, on the ESPN app, and it's like the Vikings have a 96% chance of winning. I'm like, this game is over. Let's just call it what it is and go to bed. So I'm like, Darren, it's like a 95.6% chance that the Vikings have. And he's like,
this is real. Where are you? What website was that where you're getting those statistics?
ESPN app.
Oh, I didn't know they did that.
Yeah. When any game, it shows like the
chances of them winning.
Yeah.
So for the Cincinnati Bengals, of which I am a fan, they always just comfortably feel
maybe
good
they just don't even do it for the Bengals games. Yeah. That's why you don't know.
Yeah, there's no chance, guys.
Yeah, so I'm like, it's 96 point whatever percent chance. And Darren's like, but is it 100%?
Yeah.
And then he repeats himself. Is it 100%? Like he needed me to answer.
Yeah.
I was like, no, it's not 100%. So I'm out. I'm done. I go to bed.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, I'm not sleeping. I'm like still following because I'm invested, but I'm nervous. And so
this is so funny.
I'm still following. So like a minute and a half, it's still like the Vikings they're 95% chance of winning.
Yeah.
And I can hear him in the living room cheering, cursing, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then with, I don't know, a minute or so left.
I think it was less than a minute.
The Seahawks scored and they won the game. Ended up with 100% chance of winning the game because they won the game. So he comes in, of course, and he's like, my dad is texting him, which is so funny. My dad's like, wow, what a game. And Darren's like, yeah, your daughter didn't watch. She missed the whole ending. And my dad's like, well, yeah, that's because she's my daughter. This is what we do.
There is so much to say about all of this. I don't
So I'll go back and watch now that I know the ending. I'll go back and watch.
What is happening here?
Darren's like, this is the best part of sports. Like, this is the magic and you miss it. But you know what? Like, there's just a lot of things that I can be stressed out about in my life. And so I choose not to.
Well, it says that you have a little bit of trauma, I think, with the in-between.
Here we go, guys.
Should
I lay down? Where's your couch?
No. It's just very fascinating.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, what you're saying is true.
Well, and the thing that I liked and made me want to talk about this and mention it on the podcast is just at one point in time, the statistics said 95% chance of losing.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't encourage you this morning or whatever time it is that you're listening to this, like, I don't know what will. Mm-hmm. Because that's the story of life, that often we get put in a position where the odds, which is basically what has happened in the past, say that you can't win.
Yeah.
But if you keep at it and just keep doing what you can do, like, the chances are there, even though it's only 5%.
Yeah. I mean, I love the question that he asked. Is it 100%? Because I think a lot of times we write the end of the story. And so we've talked a lot lately about like staying in the moment and staying present. Yeah. And it's like, is the story over yet? The story's not over yet. Even if there's 4 minutes left, the story's still not over. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So,
some of the best coaching advice I have ever received, because I would be on the phone with a mentor / coach, and he would just say to me, don't write the end of the story. Mm-hmm. And there are so many stories that have not ended the right way, not because it would not have worked out for them, but the author prematurely wrote the end of the story and closed the book.
Right.
Because, like Mallory Redmond, they could not survive the tension. And so better to get out of the tension and fail. And I'm not talking about you in this situation.
Yes, you are.
Better to get out of the tension, right? and feel relief to your nervous system
Yeah.
than to stay in it. And that's what most people don't understand. Emotions are energy in motion. And most of the time, the energy that is in motion around any given situation is going to speak louder than the actual situation, because we're working off of algorithms as to how our life has unfolded in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And it just says, it's a beautiful picture that shows us that no matter how tempted you are to give up or to check out because you don't like the tension, that you need to stay in it.
It's I mean, there's such a fear of disappointment.
Sure.
Like if I hang in here
Sure.
for the end of the story, I might be wildly disappointed.
For sure.
So I'd rather just duck out.
Yeah.
But you miss out on so much.
Exactly. So. And it really comes back to tracing the emotions to figure out that life is not about the wins and losses. It's about the journey and just learning as much as you can from the journey.
That's so true. And also that sounds like a bumper sticker.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
It's very true, though.
Speaking of professional athletes and nervous systems, it's really where the game has changed so much. All professional sports over the last 20 years, when I was in that arena and with those athletes every day, and that was kind of my career, the amount of time that we invested into our emotional well-being and our mental state was unbelievable, because up until that point, about 20 years ago, that really wasn't a part of the game. But part of the game now is just like your mental health and how strong you are from a mental standpoint, so that when you do make a mistake, how quick can you get back on track? Mm-hmm. And now where the science is and where a lot of the equipment is, it's more than just a feeling, right? There are actual things that you can be aware of. So they say that knowledge is power. And when you understand that your brain will work against you, and your brain will say, Mal, go get in the bed and don't watch the end of this game, because it wants taken out of the tension. Yeah. The brain wants taken out of out of uncertainty. It doesn't like existing there. When you understand that, well, then you can just acknowledge that that is one advisor at the table, and you're grateful for their threat assessment, but you need to keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, when I was down at the IMG Academy 20 years ago, actually a little longer than 20 years ago, they were already then starting to invest in athletes and help them understand the role of their emotions in big games.
So what would they do?
Well, we had 3 times a week, we had a meeting before training with a sports psychologist, and he had this ACE program at the time that was attitude, concentration, and effort. And those are the only 3 things that you could focus on going into a training session or into a game, versus outcomes. Like, you can't control if you're going to get a bad bounce with the ball. You can't control if the referee's not going to like you. You can't control if they don't feed you the ball, mm-hmm. right? You can't control if, the ball takes a bad hop right before you try to pass it or shoot it and it goes sideways. What you can control, no matter who you are or what environment you're in, is your attitude, your concentration, and your effort. And so we invested a lot of time like that. And then even just, it's now called the IMG Academy, which is International Management Group. Mark McCormick, who passed a couple of years ago, started it. But almost every major athlete in the world has belonged to IMG, which is just, again, a management group. But a lot of the world's best athletes were there receiving training. I was in the soccer program, but they were known for their tennis program. So Pete Sampras, Andre Agassi, Monica Seles.
Wow, I have not heard those names in so long. Yeah,
all of them were there. Wow. And that's where I met and used to play ping pong with Venus and Serena Williams. They were a couple of years younger than me. Venus was a couple of years younger than me, and then Serena was a couple of years younger than her. I could beat Serena. I could not beat Venus. She slapped me around the table.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that could say that.
Yeah, she was really good. And, Nick Bollettieri, when I was there, was actually called the Bollettieri Academy, but it was owned by IMG. And then as time went on, IMG took over the name of it. But one of the things that Nick Bollettieri, you'll know when you're watching a female IMG or Bollettieri player, because they scream or they shout when they hit the ball.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know how much tennis you have watched.
yes, and I've heard that.
Yeah. So those are Bollettieri players, because what he, Nick Bollettieri got his start working for the Rockefellers years ago, and he's still, I believe, in his late 80s or early 90s, and he's still out there teaching tennis. And I used to, on my way back from training, I would walk through the area where he was training Venus and Serena, and just listen to him. Anna Kournikova and a number of tennis players were there. And if you were in the upper echelon, you got to work with Nick. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Nick taught was the power of the shout. And there wasn't nearly the information or science behind it today. He just knew from being on the tennis court his whole life, more than 50 years, that there seemed to be, and they studied this because part of our program was attached to something called IPI, International Performance Institute, where they were the cutting edge leaders in science and studying athletes and angles of the knee, ankle, and hip for more power, all of these things. Mark Verstegen, who I know well, is now out in Arizona, but he consults for everyone for the Olympics. He was the head trainer for the German men's national team, and he is still leading that charge today, but he was doing it 25 years ago when I was down there in Florida. And what they started to see was that there was a release of 3 to 8% of more power when you'd hit the ball, letting out a scream with it, mm-hmm. and not holding your breath and keeping it in. And now what we know is that there is something that we call, or something that we all have called the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body. And it starts in your brainstem, and it comes behind your ears, down each side of your neck, across your chest, through your digestive system. And it's responsible for the sensory nerves in your body, basically how your nerves and your nervous system interact with your environment. And because it can get overstimulated, this is the nerve. Vagus in Latin means wandering, and it's just because of how long it is and how many things it touches. Our digestive system rests upon our nervous system, our parasympathetic nervous system, our autonomic nervous system. And so our emotions severely affect our digestive system. Mm-hmm. And as we've said before, that's why a lot of people can't lose weight. Well, the thing about the vagus nerve is when it goes down behind either side of your ears, our vocal cords affect it. And shouting, and they've also studied infants and how infants that don't cry have a weaker immune system, and their digestive system are compromised because crying and making noise stimulates or regulates, both of those, the vagus nerve, which is important to clear it every once in a while. And so sometimes it is so healthy, and you can experience so much of a reset or a breakthrough when you will just shout.
Yeah.
And clear that nerve, which basically gets bogged down with emotions, mm-hmm. and can just freeze up like your phone, mm-hmm. right? Sometimes the best thing, your phone, your tablet, or your computer, you just need to completely power it off and power it back up again.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm getting so many, you talking about like the tennis scream. Gosh.
Yeah.
Me and my sister we lived near our high school, and we used to go hit tennis balls, and we would like grunt like that.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But we didn't know why. We just did it because the famous tennis players did it.
Yeah, and Nick Bollettieri taught all of them to do that.
Yeah, that was, we picked up on that. But when I was in grad school, I remember I had a little romantic issue with somebody.
All right.
And I was like really hurt and angry and feeling all of these feelings. And my girlfriends took me out to a tennis court, and they gave me a tennis ball and a tennis racket. And they just said, like, hit the ball as hard as you can and scream. And it was like the most therapeutic thing I've ever done.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're going through a breakup, grab your tennis gear.
It's much better than a baseball bat to a car or anything else.
For sure. Yeah.
Hit the tennis ball. I feel like I owe Darren an apology. I feel like there's a lot coming out on Emotionships, the podcast.
That was before I knew him.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel better about this.
Yeah. But sometimes, that's why hearing other people scream, like hearing my children scream is nails to a chalkboard.
Sure.
And yet I try to, like when Evie, the 2.5-year-old, when she's feeling a lot of big feelings, sometimes I'm like, do you just want to yell? Like, let's just yell. And I'll like start yelling and have her practice it with me because I know how good it can feel. Yeah. And sometimes she doesn't know how to process her feelings, so she just needs to scream sometimes.
Well, and because this nerve, this vagus nerve, is attached to so many things, like it is what regulates you being in fight or flight. And so when you're spending time around people that are chronically stressed out or chronic environments that have chronic stress in them, it's very likely that somewhere with that vagus nerve that it is going to free up. And when you leave those stressful people or stressful environments, your brain won't know that because the nerve is locked on. You can't get it to turn off. And so a shout here and there is a very, very, very effective thing to get you to basically reset the system and to allow your body to get out of fight or flight and to go into rest and repair. And so if you're listening to this and you're a dignified person, which we have a lot of those, I'm trying to work my way out of being a dignified person that lives under the pressure of other people's expectations. It's just absolutely cancerous. I can't tell you this or say this enough. You have got to put your pride to the side for a little bit and literally in your car right now, like just pause us for a moment and scream as loud as you can. And you are going to text me at 937-303-4788 to tell me just how well this works.
Oh, it feels so good.
It is absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, it feels really good. So how do you know though, like you're talking about the nerve being on, what are you saying, on or off?
Well, it can freeze in a stressed situation, meaning like I have a hard day at work, my boss gets all over me, or I break something, or I make a mistake that costs money, I don't have that money. Whatever it is that would stress you out, whatever it is that would cause uncertainty, because that nerve has sensors bundled to it, like stress sensors bundled all throughout our body, it can get basically in a state where it's frozen. And even though you're not in that situation anymore, in that stressful environment or dealing with that level of uncertainty, it thinks you are, the brain thinks you are. And so your vagus nerve is how your brain interacts with your environment via the rest of your body. And so it's easy, it's not difficult to suspect that most of us are trapped in a state of fight or flight. And
so you're saying the way to get out of a state of fight or flight is to scream?
A way to release unnecessary tension and pressure in your life and built up tension and pressure in your life is through screaming.
And then, okay, so you do...
Through shouting. Let's call it shouting. Shouting might have a better connotation than screaming.
Sure. That's fine. So you leave work, you had a stressful day, you shout in the car on your way home, it's helpful. And then what? Like, is that something that some people are going to have to do every single day? Like, is this like a practice?
Yeah, I think it's good to be aware of different emotions that can get me stuck or would create a sense of built up tension or pressure in my body. And so anytime that I feel like there is built up tension or pressure, I'm going to practice that shout. Shouting sounds a little more intentional. Screaming sounds a little bit more like a reaction.
That's very true.
But let's talk about this for a second. What you're doing when you're shouting is you're releasing intentional energy. Like, this isn't going to stay in me anymore. There's the story of the children of Israel coming into the promised land, and they're up against this impossible city named Jericho, which through archaeological digs, we have found that wall was at least 11 feet thick and very tall, probably 40 to 60 feet tall. Mm-hmm. And God says to the children of Israel, you're going to march around it for 7 days. And when I tell you, you're going to shout and that it's going to fall down. And we know that wall fell down. I mean, it seems crazy, but we can confirm that it fell down. And some of the non-biblical resources secular resources say that, they question whether it was an earthquake or a shifting of the earth right there, but we know that it fell. And then in the book of Ezra, when the children of Israel are coming back from being captives in Babylon, they are instructed to bring forth the cornerstone, the finishing piece, with shouts of grace. That there is a benefit to shouting in life and just releasing. It's releasing built up energy, good or bad. Just shouting. And, I think it's our pride that says, I have to be, polite and put together and well-spoken. And when you're processing your stress or the unknown or your frustrations, like, keep those to yourself. It's kind of like children, right? They're better seen than heard. And it's just not true that our nervous system needs to be regulated. And one of the most powerful things in the world is to shout.
So are you saying just like releasing a noise, or do you use words?
Most of the time I just release a word. And
you do use words.
A noise, excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Most of the time I just release a noise, but I can shout a word too.
I think what you're speaking to, and
yeah,
people can feel whatever they want to about this, is one of the reasons that I sometimes cuss.
Sure. I was just getting ready to say that before I gave the example, but that's exactly what it is. Cursing is putting weight into a word and then letting it out. I think it was Will Rogers that said profanity is an attempt of the feeble mind to express itself forcefully.
Yeah.
And the thing from a moral, spiritual standpoint is, in resisting that, there is an option to practice discipline and not let my feelings dictate things. But often I feel as if we revert to cursing because we have no other way of getting built up energy out of us. And people don't see, because unfortunately, living in the day and age where a cell phone captures energy from the other side of the world and then interprets it so we can hear it through what we call a voice, we have been left to not know how to interpret or understand energy ourselves. But every shout, every noise, every syllable, every word is made up of different forms of energy, different hertz and vibrations and tones. And they are just as real. They are the driving force of everything real in life. Long before an airplane or a car was invented, there was a picture in someone's head that came from somewhere, from watching a bird fly or whatever it was. And then it turned into a thought, and to become visible, the step for it to become visible was where the energy of the thought of a bird flying through the air that could be replicated and turned into a word or a series of words from a thought. And then people were able to do that because the word became known audibly. And so if something is not known audibly or is not voiced, then it is going to stay inside. But it is still energy. We study plants, and I just had a friend that did the Bourbon Trail down in Louisville, and he was talking about, in the same way they age different spirits in different barrels, right? Like Chardonnay barrels or steel barrels or sherry barrels, whatever it is. There's a new distillery down in Louisville or outside of Louisville that is aging the spirits through music. And so they're in these barrels, and at any given time you can get on their website and see the playlist for the day that they're using to age the spirits that you're going to drink, the bourbon that you're going to drink. And the whole idea behind it is, if energy can be in a oak barrel from Chardonnay that was in there, or sherry that was in there, energy can be in the wood. We know this. This is true, and can influence the shape of that spirit, and therefore the taste.
Okay, so what What do you say? So what do they do with the music?
They play it really, really loud where the spirits are being stored.
In order to
change the sound waves that are in the air that changes the structure of the wood in the barrel or even the steel through vibrations, that is the hertz that the spirits are resting at or that they're aging in.
So what kind of music is it?
Everything you can imagine that they're doing with it. There's a different, from my understanding, I haven't checked it out, but from my understanding, there's a new playlist every day.
Fascinating.
And so there's some spirits that are aged with rock. There are some spirits that are aged with classical. There are some spirits that are aged with reggae. And that's going to be one of the things that they, in their tasting rooms, that is the difference in their spirits.
Super interesting. I feel like that's the kind of thing that it makes sense and I'm like on board, but if you think about it too much, it sounds super crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And people say this to me all the time. But why in the world doesn't anyone think that someone that picks up a phone in LA today and calls you in Ohio and you can hear their voice with no cords attached, why don't they think that's crazy?
What's crazy is people who still answer the phone.
Well,
why are we calling people? It's insane.
I'm not going to follow that one.
Okay, go ahead.
But it's just the importance of understanding that energy is always in motion. Mm-hmm. And, I say this when coaching people. One of my major goals is to help them understand that there is so much more happening in a room or in a conversation than the words you hear. And so your body senses the energy in the room before your brain does. Your brain uses your vagus nerve that goes throughout the rest of your body to absorb energy. And that's why certain things should not be said via text or even over the phone. People need to be facing each other because there's so much more to communicate in person. And it's like school right now. We've done a lot of distant learning and gotten into GoToMeeting and Zoom and all of that. I guarantee you what will come out 1 to 5 years from now or 3 to 5 years from now is just how different and limited our ability to communicate to our students was when we were trying to do it online.
Oh, sure.
It's not there.
Yeah.
Because, our heart is the biggest receptor, and there's a field, an electromagnetic field that comes from our heart that typically is about 7 to 9 feet. And so when you're in someone's field, that's why, you and I were doing a counseling session last week, and I'm sitting there with this individual who listens to the podcast, and I just said, we talked about their situation, and they told me what they thought was going on, and why they're talking to me. I'm just listening to their body and what their energy is telling me. And I said to this individual, it's your dad. That's who you're generationally connected to. And here are some of the emotions that you're having a hard time getting over because of that connection to your dad. And then I heard, internally from her energy, because I'm in her field, mm-hmm. I heard, which is, I don't have to be in someone's field. It just takes a little more energy to interact with someone from a different space or further out than that 7 feet, whether it be across the room or across the country. And I hear while she's talking that it's her dad, and then I hear Mike. And then I said, okay, I asked her body, I said, who's Mike? And her energy said it's her dad. And I didn't say anything because right after it says her dad, the energy of her body says it's her uncle. So then I'm, part of learning and growing when it comes to interpreting energy is no different than any other language, picking up on or honing in on the specifics to communicate better, mm-hmm. and to hear better. And so then I'm sitting there just in silence while she's still talking and you're listening. And I'm saying, okay, what is it? Is it her dad or is it her uncle? Because I would have just come out and said it like, your dad's Mike, right? Mm-hmm. Or I would have said, it's your uncle. Mike's your uncle, correct? Mm-hmm. But because I heard both, I didn't say anything. And so you heard me say to her, mm-hmm. who's Mike? And she goes, Mike's my dad. I said, oh, I heard your dad, but I also heard your uncle. And she said, it's my uncle too.
Yeah, they're both named Mike.
Yeah, so both of them had that. And the point is, the day and age in which we live now, where we use devices to interpret energy and deliver energy, that all used to be people stuff. 150 years ago, 200 years ago, and all the way back since the beginning of time, like the seer in the community, right, is the person that could see the invisible. They were the doctor. And so when we talk about witch doctors, that's just stories that came out of how they described the people that could see and feel the things that other people could not see and feel. It was a normal thing. That was the person that helped people get better in the village.
So does everybody have the ability?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Well,
of course.
What you just said made it sound like there was a particular person.
Well, there are people that are gifted to do it even more and to teach other people to do it more. And I say it's the gift versus the grace. Everyone has the grace to do it. Some people have the gift. It's like soccer. Everybody has the grace to play soccer. Some people have the gift to play soccer. And so there are people that are given gifts to help those with the grace understand it more. I was giving the example of a friend who was in Fallujah as a Marine, and he is an energy person himself. This was several years ago, and they go in and they're clearing this house, and something tells him, don't go out the back door. So one of his teammates is getting ready to go out the back door, and he grabs him by the back of the armored vest and says, no, we're going out the front, which is not something that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to clear the house and not go out the way that you came in. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, they did, and someone went around the back of the house, and there was an IED underneath the doormat going out the back door. Would have killed them all.
Yeah.
Energetically, he sensed it, because that IED that was there was a reality. And what's the point? The point is that your body is a huge antenna. And when you live in a day and age like we do, where we've farmed out our responsibility to interact with what is, right, then we end up dumbing down our senses and rely only upon intellect. We have to, and there's a huge spiritual component here. You get yourself in trouble because you have to see it or put your hands on it in order for it to be real. But everything that you can put your hands on or see started off as energy, and the quicker you can get to it, and it's the whole point of this podcast, right? Like learning these things so that you can understand the real reason everything's happening for a reason in your life. Your body will pick up on it, and it's your opportunity to train yourself to become more familiar with the energy. And part of that is understanding that you have this long nerve called the wandering nerve, the vagus nerve, that is attached to receptors all throughout your body that help you sense the energy that's in the room.
Mm-hmm. There's so much to be said in this whole conversation about pride.
Oh, it's amazing.
Like being comfortable looking undignified.
Oh,
because
man.
like your example about what was it, a Marine or a Navy SEAL or whatever?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you just have to do things that don't necessarily make sense.
100%.
Or don't look like.
Because what makes sense? You're right. What makes sense? Makes sense is that my brain understands it. But we are eternal beings that will outlive our breath, right? Mm-hmm. Think about all of the people that are no longer, here on the planet that are still affecting you. Our life outlasts our breath, and that's because it's energy. And so I was talking with our executive team from Table 33 Sunday night. Some of them came over just to talk about the future and where we're headed, which great things are happening at Table 33. I could not be more excited about it. And I was saying that I had the opportunity to speak when my grandmother was retiring after 50 years in the school that she and my grandfather started. And the quote that I've used, I think, once or twice here before is, if you die with a dream in your heart, you die a dreamer. If you die with a dream in their heart, you die a legacy. And so when we say that your life outlasts your breath, that's what we're talking about. Yeah. Getting the life and the passion that is in you into other people is how your life, it's just one picture of how your life is eternal and it outlasts you. And the vagus nerve is such an important thing, plays such an important role, because it can get stuck and jammed up. And if it's the thing that's communicating to your brain what's going on energetically, you've got to have the ability to get it unstuck. And so let's connect pride to all of this for a minute.
Yes, please.
Pride is a protection mechanism. And pride says, I don't deserve to deal with this anymore. I don't deserve to feel ashamed. I don't deserve to feel caught off guard. I don't deserve to feel less important than you. I don't deserve to feel insignificant. I don't deserve to feel stupid. And so pride are walls that we put up to protect ourselves from uncertainty because somebody didn't handle it the right way. Mm-hmm. So anything that you can do to dismantle that, to open yourself back up and to get that, to clear the lines so that the world's energy, God's energy you can start sensing it, is so important. So when people come to me, and this happens every single week, and they say, I can't hear God, right? God's not speaking to me. We've got to understand that if you're a phone, right? Let's just say that let's compare you to a phone.
Okay.
And God made you. God put an antenna in you. And if it's jammed or unplugged, despite how sophisticated that phone is and how it can serve you, you've got to figure out how the piece that God gave you, why it's not working. And there's a practical reason for it, and it just needs a little bit of attention. Mm-hmm. And so our vagus nerve, by shouting, can blow the pride out. It can help deal with the fear that has kept your antenna off, which is keeping you from interacting with the supernatural, which includes God.
Yeah, I think, just to oversimplify it, sometimes when I'm driving, we live near each other, and they're like, our normal route right now is closed because of construction. And so there's a number of different ways that we can go home that are all equally annoying. But I've been going the same way. And the other day I'm like, for some reason, I feel like I need to go the other way. Yeah. And I think most people, like, that's something that they can identify with, where it's like, this doesn't really make sense to me, but why am I thinking about this route rather than another route? And who knows? Like, I took that route and I don't know why. It was something different, but who knows what I was being protected from, or like, it doesn't, you don't always get to see it.
And here's the thing. Even if you were wrong, you were right, because you made an attempt to respond, to follow the impulse, and that will serve you. I've had plenty of times where I heard something like, hey, the iron is on, you left the iron on, go back inside and check it. And it's not. Or the oven. Yeah. And it's not. Mm-hmm. But I followed the impulse, and there's benefit in that, because I'm trying to get outside of just being led by what makes sense to me. Yeah. Because that's, you're handicapped that way. Yeah. And so people will often say something to me about what is covered on this podcast, like, do you weird people out? Do people say things to you like you're a freak, or how are you talking about this stuff? Like, you seem, and I'm like, no, honestly, we have all of these people that are undercover. They understand a lot of what we're saying. They just haven't had the courage to try it. Mm-hmm. And 9 out of 10 times, someone's like, man, I know what you're saying is right, and I've had a similar experience. Yeah. I'm just a little nervous to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of courage to, like, I had someone last week say to me, there's somebody, I can't remember the name. There's a Vanessa. It was some name that didn't resonate with me. Yeah. That doesn't mean that they were wrong.
Sure.
But it takes a lot to say, like, who's Mike?
Sure.
I mean, that's a pretty safe name. Most of us know a Mike, but still, it takes a lot to kind of put yourself out there. But I think what you're saying is right. It's like, you're not wrong because you answered the question, or because you didn't get it correct.
Well, and when your sense of self-worth is not attached to your ability to get it right, you can ask those questions.
Sure.
Questions, who's Mike?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and I've had crazy examples in the past, where it took a minute for them to even remember who it was and how that name was connected to their life. Yeah. But the idea is just pushing through. Like, when you get unstuck, it is ridiculous how much better life can get. And maybe a first step for a number of people listening is to start practicing the shout, being intentional about the shout. Mm-hmm. I think in one of the earlier episodes of Emotionships in the early days, right? I told the story where 2 dogs charged me, And my impulse was to shout at them, and they stopped.
I don't remember that story.
Well,
Is that the whole thing?
It's a story where it was in the middle of the night, and you remember it. The principal called me and said,
yes.
"Hey, there's some underage kids drinking from the school, and I think some of them are on your soccer team," because I was coaching soccer at the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, "All right, I'll go with you." And the house sat way back off the road, and these two big dogs charged us, and I felt led to shout at them, and they listened and stopped, and the principal is no longer with us. He passed several years ago, but he told the story for the rest of his life.
Really?
Well, a wild situation where these two big dogs just stopped in their place and sat there and stared at us.
Yeah.
And we went on our way. But again, therapy-wise, that could be the missing component for a lot of people listening. Mm-hmm. And if you can't shout, ask yourself why. Mm-hmm. What's going on that you can't raise your voice and defy the boundaries that you've set for yourself. Start off doing it alone.
Yeah.
This is funny.
Okay.
So I'm a fan of Peloton, and I'm on my Peloton, I don't know, 4 days a week, 5 days a week.
Good
and
job.
One of the instructors on there that I like will say give yourself a shout, or build yourself up, be loud. And so I can do it really easily when no one else is around, Amy or the kids are not in the house. But I struggle when they are, because I'm listening very loud through my AirPods.
Yeah.
And I just really don't want to startle anyone. But it feels so good when you can just shout and be loud. And the idea is I'm not holding anything back.
Yeah.
I don't care what people think about me.
Yeah. You know what I do? Mondays I clean my house usually.
I've seen videos.
I put my AirPods in and listen to music really loud. And I don't sing the music, I shout the music, which is just so fun and therapeutic. And sometimes Darren's home and sometimes he's not. But I don't care. But it feels so good to just be loud.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
It's very freeing.
Well, you're defying the boundaries that have been set for you by other people.
Yeah. Forget those boundaries.
I mean,
blow them up.
It's healthy to get outside of them.
Yeah, for sure.
I never can remember the song, John Mayer's song that says, "Do you like me or the thought of me?" And so many people have thoughts about who we are. And if we're not careful, especially if our vagus nerve is down and we can't sense other people's healthy or unhealthy energy, we will find ourselves flying blind, because the antenna that God gave us to sense what is going on is offline. And therefore we spend our life fitting inside the mold of what someone else created for us.
Right.
And that's especially true of anyone in a position of responsibility. Yeah. That we can very easily have our life be defined by who we need to be for others. And it's a miserable place to be.
Oh my goodness. Sometimes I think about when I pass on and I am on to the next journey, will I have the opportunity to look back and see all that I missed out on because I was so worried about what other people thought of me?
Oh.
I mean, that is a terrifying, that alone is what will keep me living a very undignified life, because how horrifying to lose out on so much life.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to stay inside a mold that who knows built for you.
I don't know if this is still up on my podcast, if it's our podcast blog at charliecarroll.com. If it's not, we need to get it back up. It's one of the greatest quotes from my grandfather of all time. And I wrote a post about it entitled "With or Without the Hat."
Oh yeah, it's still there. I'm pretty sure it's still there.
And I was going through a season of life where there was some transition in some of the companies that I was running, and I was wearing a fedora. And he was at Miami Valley Hospital on his birthday, and I went to see him, and I had the hat on, and I said, "Gramps, what do you think?" And he had a hard time by this time communicating, and he said, "With or without the hat?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "With or without the hat, people will find ways not to like you. Do what you want to do." Mm-hmm. And it's just
Brilliant.
it's so true, especially the further you go in leadership and responsibility. Like, you need to be true to who you are, because people that want to dislike you will always find a way to dislike you.
Yep, for sure.
And you end up becoming as stuck as they are, and and therefore as frustrated as they are, because you compromised what you knew to be true in order to try to get someone that will never like you to like you.
Yeah.
And so a shout is probably the smallest but most effective way to regulate and free your vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in your body that is responsible for release, for letting things go. And like you said, yeah, cursing is another opportunity to do that. But cursing is just trying to take the most powerful or weighty word and let it fly to release energy with it. Now, some people, there was a guy that I played soccer with back in those IMG days named Dave, and every word Dave used was followed up with the F word.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about.
Every single word. And so he got in a habit where it was just part of his vocabulary. But in most cases, people are using what we consider to be curse words or profanity in order to release energy. Yeah. And it's a word that sticks out more than all of the other words that we use. Well, you can let some of that same tension go by just practicing the shout. And again, what I'll say to those that are listening that think they could never do that, the fact that you could never do that, or you're struggling to think about yourself or envision yourself doing that, is not the problem. The problem is that you are so fearful of the idea of the energy in motion. And it's the energy in motion that's the force field that's keeping you from the truth behind it that will set you free.
Okay, so if someone's like, I hear what you're saying and that sounds good and I can't get myself to do it, where do they start?
Yeah, I would get in your car or out on your run in the neighborhood or wherever you are. And here's the trick about the shout. It has to feel right, meaning you can't give a little shout or it's not going to serve you.
Yeah, it's got to be like
it's got to
gut.
Yeah, it's got to be like that Braveheart shout.
Yeah.
It's got to feel like you released everything, holding nothing back, without reserve, without hesitation. It is a phrase that I attach to it. That without reserve, without hesitation, when you get the impulse to shout, you just let it go. And I'm telling you.
Okay, but that's not an answer to the question.
Oh, re-ask it. I'm sorry.
Okay, because I'm saying if somebody understands what you're saying and agrees, but can't get themselves to do it, where do they start? And you're saying they start with, like, they just do. You're just saying, just do it.
Just do it.
Just shut up and do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's not too much more to do.
Okay, I was just hoping for like maybe a little baby step or something for our listeners. Who
I think the baby step is awareness and understanding. Okay. I think that's the baby step, and then you just got to get to a place. It's funny because you're gonna feel like you're stepping out in front of so many people, right, with a new bathing suit on that might be too tight or not fit you the right way. Yes. Yeah. And you're not. It's nowhere close to that.
Yeah.
But it is so healthy to get in environments where you purposely defy the pressure that is coming to get you to conform to what others want you to be or need you to be. Yeah. Then the shout does that. I did not know, and maybe you did not know until you did it, a couple of weeks ago when I was on the road and you were leading the services at City Church, that this is something that you gave people the opportunity to do, to come up on the stage and just shout.
Yeah, it came to me in the moment.
Yeah.
And what was so hard about it is I had to do it. I was the one leading the charge. And so I didn't have beautiful. A choice. So I started, and it takes a second to like put your pride away, but it does have to be like bodily.
Oh yeah.
Like you kind of bend at the knee, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It has to be like a whole body thing. And it feels so good.
Well, and there are a lot of examples throughout history, other than just biblical examples, where the shout released a level of power that won the battle, right? And it's just like you see these scenes in Braveheart where they're severely outmanned and they don't have not only do they not have the numbers that the other side has, but they don't have the equipment. And there's something about a human being wide open that has the ability to change the world like a person that is 80% there does not have.
So true.
And that's what one of our wishes or desires for you are listening to this episode today, is that this is a small, easy way to start to clear all of those emotions that have been pinned up inside of you, and a false sense of dignity and some pride is keeping the lid on things, and you need to let it out.
It's good.
Do you want to give us an example?
Right into the microphone.
Yeah,
I'm sure people are freaked out that we're going to do that and blow their speakers.
No, we won't blow your speakers.
No.
Emotionships, the podcast, episode 37. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. More to come. Good guest interviews coming up. Some politics.
Oh, are we podcasting every week, every day of the week?
We did get some feedback that people wanted us to podcast every day leading up to the election.
Gelman?
That's it.
Okay.